Good morning, friends and neighbors. This is Mike Lurvey from the Cooper Young Beautification.
And Judy Shalabarger, Arboretum Tree Chairman.
Yes, and we're about to plant a roughleaf dogwood in the Spanish American War Park. There's our resident Rough Rider over there. Yeah, so there are a few things you want to keep in mind when you're planting a tree. First thing you want to think about is sight, because if you sight a tree wrong, it's probably going to struggle and it may die. So this dogwood is an understory tree, native to Tennessee.
It's a roughleaf dogwood.
That's right, and it likes to grow in partial shade. So a good spot for a tree like this is under a big canopy tree, like the one that's right behind us there. Yeah. So the next thing to keep in mind is you want to dig your hole big enough to give your tree a good start. And a good rule of thumb is twice the diameter of the container that the tree came in. And we had some little Lebowski overachievers on this hole. A little bit deeper than the container, and then you can come back in with a little bit of soil amendment and some native soil that's loose so that the taproot has somewhere to go.
You want to tell me what soil amendment is?
Oh yeah, so well, these specifically, these soil amendments, this is good old-fashioned compost, and that comes from the kitchen of Sharon over at Stone Soup here in the neighborhood, and she's a good steward and a swell lady in general. So anyway, what I like to do is I'll put a little bit of amendment in the bottom of the hole so that the taproot will chase it, and you get a good stable tree setting, and the wind has less of a chance to knock it down while it's establishing. Also, I guess we should talk about the time of year that you should plant trees. So fall and winter. Don't try your best not to plant a tree in a warm growing season, because it's going to struggle and you're going to have to do a lot more work. If you plant them in, say, it's February now, which is okay, but if you plant them in November, by the time the hot weather gets here in May or June, it's got half a year worth of work done by the time it really encounters any real stress. So it's got a good head start. They may look dormant during the winter time, but all the fun stuff is happening underground. So that's what we're going to focus on right now. So we got some of that, and we got some of this organic Espoma Starter Plus that Miss Judy picked up, and it's got actually mycorrhiza in it, which is a fungus that works in symbiotic relationship with trees by in the process of moving food and nutrients around. So, all right, so we're gonna end up doing some editing. I just get this in the bottom of the hole nice and loose, and this is all mostly kitchen scraps. There's a little bit of brown in here, but it's mostly green. That tree will get in here and get watered in nice, and it'll be ready to roll. And you see this soil really kind of does need a little bit of help, because you've got a real shallow topsoil layer just below the turf and a whole lot of fat Tennessee red clay.
Good clay.
Yeah, which is, it's got some nutrient in it, but what you want to add that organic for is to increase the water holding capacity and the drainage, and those are two very distinct and important things.
Which is why we're doing native trees. It goes better in our native soil.
That's right. Yeah, we don't have to trick it to grow in this stuff, because it's used to growing in it over the last, 10 or 12,000 years. We've got our tree set in the hole now. The roots are all loose and happy in the hole. Two things really important now is you want to make sure that you don't change the soil horizon all that much. So you want to make sure that the tree goes in the ground and it breaks the surface basically where it was set in the pot. Because if you go too high or too low, you girdle the tree and it'll die. Next thing is mulching, and before you put your mulch down, it's a good idea to put some newspaper, just regular old newspaper, down as a weed barrier. It'll keep all the seeds that have been sitting here in the seed bank ready for an opportunity to grow from competing with your new tree. We're almost done. tree is sited slightly above the soil horizon so that when it rains it'll settle and be perfect. Now we need to talk about mulching because that's important. So we put the newspaper down as a weed barrier, and now we're putting some nice hardwood and pine mulch down. Main thing to remember here is you want to build a donut, not a volcano, because if you put mulch up against the trunk of the tree, it's going to basically act like a compost pile. It's going to get hot, it's going to bring bugs in there to invite disease and infection, and your tree is probably going to die. It's a really easy way to kill a tree if that's what you're wanting to do. So you keep the mulch away from the middle. It'll work like this. And there's your little donut. That'll help with your water retention and keep you from murdering your tree. I don't eat donuts, but I know what they look like. Anywho, what do you think? How do you feel about that? So then, yeah, now we need to water. You want to water thoroughly. And if you water right the first time, and you plant at the right time of year, you'll probably, under rare circumstances, have to water it ever again. But this is Memphis, and you never know how the weather's going to go. But you want to water right at the base of the root ball like this. And give it a good head start. Probably going to take a little bit more water than that just to get everything saturated in the hole. But that's kind of it. And yeah, we'll come back and take some pictures in the spring when it's all pretty and flowery. Thanks for listening.